One thing I was thinking was sports don't necessarily translate all that successfully to movies very often, but there seems to be a difference with boxing if you think of like Million Dollar Baby, obviously, or the Rocky movies, Raging Bull, for instance. Why do you think it does translate so well to the cinema?
I think it's so personal. You know, you can see into a character's, into their soul, but to what they're thinking, their heart. You know, it's such a beautifully violent sport. And when football and other type sports, maybe you're covered up, helmet, you can't really have that connection. But I think there's a really human connection with boxers to see two men in a square just throwing hands, slugging it out. I think there's a real connection there with that sport.
So Tessa, I just wondered what your reaction was when you heard there was going to be a sequel, and what it was like to return to playing Bianca.
Yeah, I was so excited just because I love playing this character and I love playing alongside Mike, so we really relished the idea of coming back and getting to explore that relationship again. I remember when, Mike, one of the early conversations we had around it, we were on FaceTime together and he was pitching this idea of them having a family, which at first, sort of like Bianca, I was like, I don't know, are we ready? Are we ready to do that? But it's been so fun to explore that with him.
Stephen, I just wondered how much of a fan of the Rocky series you were yourself. I mean, you're wearing the T-shirt, so...
That says it all.
And what was it that made you want to come on board to direct Creed II?
It's like you said, being a fan of the franchise, just having the opportunity to be a part of this family. I think for me, when I first got the gig, to be totally honest with you, or heard about getting the gig, I was a bit nervous about where they were going with the sequel because the rest of the franchise is so good. So it wasn't until I actually spoke to Sly and spoke to Mike and spoke to Tessa that I felt good about entering the project, because it was just one of those things where you're worried about where the direction they're going, and then talking to these guys, it really made me feel at home. It really was like, we want you to come in and do you, and we think you'll be great for the job. And so that helped me jump in with another level of excitement.
And there's so much going on in the movie in all different areas, but what did you make of the idea of bringing Dolph Lundgren back, an iconic screen villain after all these years, like 3 decades on?
No, when I first heard that, it was through Sly and his Instagram. Man, I think he was going around talking about he's bringing the Dragos back, and part of me was excited, then a part of me was like, oh man, I hope it's done in the right way. Did not think I was going to be the one to direct the project. And so when I got on board, I saw the script and I'm like, oh, he's going in an interesting direction. And what I want to do is just tap more into the Drago side a bit. We open up the film a little differently than the rest of the franchise and stuff like that. That really showcases the Drago side and what they're going through so far as relationships.
Florian, can you tell us a bit about your boxing and kickboxing experience in real life, and also what your reaction was to landing this amazing role in Creed II?
Yeah, I was growing up with boxing. My father trained for boxing, was a boxer. So I was, used to watch him in the gym. And obviously, my father is my biggest idol. So I grew up with him, watching him, so I wanted to be like him. So it was only a matter of time till I asked my father to train me. And I think he took me into the gym when I was 10 years old. I had my first amateur fight when I was 12. And, I kept going, with boxing and with fighting because I enjoyed it a lot. It helped me to deal with unsolved problems. And I kept going till the first division in Germany. I boxed like all over the world during the amateur career. Had 78 fights. And then I was about to turn professional because, boxing was and is still the first love of my life. But then this opportunity came up, so I took the chance, yeah.
And I believe you told your trainer on this movie, don't kind of treat me like an actor who's preparing to play a boxer, just treat me like a fighter. And I wondered how important it was for you to do that.
Oh yeah, no, it's crucial. First time around, I remember telling everybody that, and the same thing on this one, and I'll say it, on the next one, or however, whatever I do, is like, no matter what I'm doing in front of the camera, I don't, if I'm in character and I'm playing a certain role, I want you to treat me like that. Don't treat me like an actor. It's just, I gotta believe it. It has to be real to me. And if I know somebody's like giving me special treatment or not treating me as the role that I'm playing, the character that I'm playing, then it throws me off. So it's just better for everybody if they just treat me like a fighter, yeah.
And music's always been an integral part of the Rocky series and the first Creed movie.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your involvement in the music in this movie, of course, performing songs and helping to write them as well?
Yeah, well, it's paramount to her. In the first film, you literally hear her music before you see her, so her music is so central to her, and it presented me with the really interesting challenge of getting to write and perform original music, which I did on the first film and got to do it on this film as well. The cool thing in this film, I think, is we tried to invite more of a pop sensibility, and we also wanted to see the ways in which her maturity and her evolution now would be reflected in her music. And this time around, I had the chance to work with artists like James Fauntleroy and Bibi Borelli, who are both so incredibly talented, and getting a chance again to work with Ludwig, who also scores the film and produces those songs, is just a joy for me.
Exactly, because he was a man of few words, wasn't he, really, in the first one, and quite sort of machine-like, so I think it was a great idea to open the movie and we're going to see their perspective this time.
Yeah, this time, and we also want they give him more words, you know what I mean? I figured it would be cool to actually see him speak in Russian. Dolph had never done that before. He didn't speak Russian, neither does Florian. He's from Germany. And so putting them two together, going through that whole, training process and learning Russian, and made it feel authentic, and then it made you feel like you can side with them more, and they had really strong, intimate moments on set, and so I really hope that, was showcased in the film.
And Sylvester Stallone is so sort of integral to this whole series, and has directed himself, and is one of the screenwriters this time. What kind of advice did he give you or a really vital piece of advice he gave you as you set about to direct the movie?
He gave me a lot of advice. Wow, no, he gave me a lot of advice. One, he gave a lot of fight choreography advice, because he's done it so many times, right? Feels like he invented boxing matches almost. But, he has this formula that just works. But two, he was, our first meeting, when we spoke, he said, don't try to do what I did, do like what you do. He saw my feature film, The Land, and he talked about moments that worked, moments that had some poetry in it. And I just saw the filmmaker in the slide, and he was like, be your own artist, have your vision for the project, and then you'll succeed. But then throughout the process, he just was giving me nuggets here and there, to help me get through it, how to execute shooting a fight scene, and, how to do it efficiently. And so he was kind of like a teacher and mentor throughout the process.
And Dolph, what are your memories of making Rocky IV, and do you sort of look back on it as really helping to launch your career as an actor?
Oh, certainly, yes. I was a chemical engineering student who happened to run into the singer Grace Jones back in Australia when I was there, and she took me on this whirlwind tour of New York and the 54 and Andy Warhol and Michael Jackson and all these people. And somebody told me, hey man, you're a karate champion. You should try, you should be in the movies. And I'm like, okay, I'll try that. Ended up studying acting, and then a year later I was up for this boxing movie. It turned out to be Rocky IV, and changed my life overnight.
And is he a character that still, today, if you run into people on the street or whatever, that they'll mention him to you?
Mostly, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think so. That's the one that people will ask me to do.
And I know a lot of people will be talking to you about the training and probably asking you for some tips and that kind of thing, but I just wondered how being so physically fit affects you kind of internally for the character work when you're portraying like Adonis.
It's layers. As an actor, you need as many things possible to make that world real to you, whether it's wardrobe, physique, whether it's your backstory. There's certain things that an actor needs in order to build those layers for them to feel comfortable, and the physique as a boxer definitely is one of them.
And it was James Brown who went out in front of Creed in Apollo Creed in Rocky IV, wasn't it? And it's you this time. So what was that sequence like? The "I Go to War" song.
It was great, and I'm basically I am like a female James Brown. So I'm glad that audiences will finally understand that.
And I love that we get to see Bianca's reaction so much during the fights, as we did with Adrian in the earlier the Rocky movies. And there is a sense of, she's right in there in the ring with him. Can you talk a bit about that aspect and shooting those sequences?
Yeah, and she also, I really love this idea that she also is sort of the audience, that I get to embody what the audience might be feeling. And, this time around, particularly because they're new parents, it's bigger than just them. That's something that Bianca talks about, but it really stood to intensify the stakes around those fight scenes. And one thing that I really enjoyed about watching these fights, particularly the ones with Drago, is that I feel like the villain has been so humanized and complicated. So it's sort of, because you also have a sense of Drago, his relationship with his father, and that complexity, it's not as cut and dry as sort of wanting him to lose. There's real sort of emotional stakes that are complicated, and I love that about this film. I think it's really unique.
And sports don't necessarily always translate that well to movies. There's a few exceptions, obviously, but when it comes to boxing, think of like Raging Bull, $1 Million Baby. I mean, there's so many, of course, all the Rocky movies and the first Creed. Why do you think it's a sport that does translate well to the cinema?
That's interesting because Sly also brought that up too. It was just like caring about the characters. You know what I mean? There were definitely moments where I would get caught up because I'm like, I gotta have a really great fight scene, and Sly would remind me that it's really about the stuff outside the ring, and he'll say that this is only part of it, and people will care about anything you do in the ring as long as you really build up these characters. And so that was the focus. Ultimately, I think that's what made the series last so long. Is that there were moments that you connect with these human beings and not necessarily these boxers. And so when you're in the ring, when they're going through these obstacles, you know exactly what they're going through. And my job as a director was really to capture the perspective of that, stay in Adonis's head, get into the ringside corner moments, initiate the underdog story. And then this one, I guess, is obviously different because now you see another corner too that also has a storyline. So my job was to make it a little more complex.
I guess and those fight sequences, I mean, they look so dynamic, but you don't want to be doing anything that's just sort of showing off because, like you say, you want to stay with those.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, there's definitely moments where I've definitely shot some stuff that I wanted to show off with. But when you're editing or even when you're on set, you realize that I sat in so much drama in this film that when I got to the fight scenes, even in the edit, I was like, people want to get to the fights, and now at this moment, I want to hit them hard because they weren't really expecting to get hard with this. So I took this more aggressive approach to the fight scene, more in your face a bit.
And at one point, Adonis says he wants to rewrite history. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about kind of revisiting history, but without it kind of just being a rerun, doing something different with it.
Yeah, I mean, he was worried about how he was looked at, you know what I mean? I think we all are, even in our personal lives. And so as that line came about, I just want to rewrite history. It actually was like on the set, to be honest with you. It wasn't even like, it wasn't written yet. And he's like, you can rewrite history. But it was a moment where we were working on a scene and we were talking about what do we want to change. And before that, we had shot a scene where he's like, Creed versus Drago, you can't say one name without the other. And so it's true. When we talk about Rocky IV, you talk about when Apollo died. And so in this film, we wanted to have an opportunity to change the narrative with the Creed background. And he felt like he was allowed to in his first fight, and he should have. And so it's kind of the reason why he takes this fight, because he feels like he really wants to change how his father was looked at and how he's looked at, and ultimately how his family would be looked at. And so it added this level of stakes to the fight. It just wasn't about winning anymore,
And in Rocky IV, your character was kind of a man of few words, really, wasn't he? And we didn't really get to see things from his perspective. So what did you enjoy this time around when we really do get to see things from his side?
I think it was needed, and I think that it's fate that I ended up having to play this guy again and reach down deep inside to show who he was and who he is and who I am, in order perhaps for my career to be a little more like I wanted it to be before, but I couldn't because Ivan Drago was in the way. He was just too looming over me like a ghost.
And I like the way Adonis calls Sylvester's character, Rocky, obviously, Unk. It's kind of very sweet. Could you talk a bit about the relationship that's developed between them and how that might mirror your own relationship with Sly as well?
No, I think Adonis's first interaction with Rocky was, wanting a trainer, needing somebody who understood him, understood what it was like to have this urge to want to fight when everybody else around you was telling you not to. And then also, he was the one who knew his father the best, besides, Marianne. And he knew he needed, mentorship. He needed guidance, a father figure, so to speak. And Rocky kind of became that over some time, over the first film and the second film. And us personally, same type of guidance. Sly has always given gems of wisdom, and he's always very professional on set. I take a lot of notes, as far as how he treats people on set and all that good stuff. So,
And I think one of the things that's always been important in the Rocky movies is the music, and not just the iconic theme, but music generally. But when it comes to the kind of the Rocky theme that we all know, you use it quite sparingly in the film. Can you just talk a bit about deciding sort of when and where you can place it, and different variations that like the piano version, you sort of think, oh, that's what it is, and you don't necessarily immediately recognize it.
Yeah, no, there's two variations going on. There's the Rocky theme and the Creed variation. The Rocky theme is usually used when Adonis and Rocky's having a moment, or when Rocky's by himself and he's contemplating, and there's where you slow it up a bit. But for the big Bill Conti theme to come in heavy, you have to wait and earn that moment. So that obviously doesn't come until you feel like it's the need. And so managing that, I think, is really just figuring out whose moment it is, what's the scene about, and who we're about to track afterwards. And that kind of, you start to see where the placement should be. But it's a very iconic theme. Every time you hear it, it just does something to you every time. And there's also an Adrian theme that I thought was sort of separate. But we get into that too in the film, and I didn't know Adrian Ludwig, who composed it. He's the one who introduced me to the Adrian theme, and I was like, oh, that's what that meant. So it was at the graveyard and stuff like that.
And we're really looking forward to Men in Black. I'm sure you can't say too much about it, but what was the experience of shooting that like, an atmosphere on set and that kind of thing?
It was so fun. I mean, again, I got to come back and work with a co-star that I love in the form of Chris Hemsworth, and working with F. Gary Gray, who's tremendous, and I think we did something hopefully fresh and original inside of a world that I love. I'm obsessed with the Men in Black movies. I love those movies. So it felt almost like this, in a sense of working on something and surreal to be playing inside of that universe. And we have just the most astounding cast between Emma Thompson and Kumail Nanjiani and Rebecca Ferguson and Rafe Spall and Liam Neeson. It's like just the most incredible, group of actors. So to get to work with them every day, I was like, what is happening? And just to work with, goofy alien people.
Yes.
It's so fun.
And another essential part is obviously the montages of the whole series. So when going back to Rocky IV, there was kind of Ivan Drago was being trained almost like the Bionic Man, wasn't he? Kind of like with all the machines or the laboratory, whereas Sly was kind of out there in the snow and everything. Can you talk about your vision for the training montage for this
no, Adonis Creed is at a different point in his career, and so within the training montages we have a few, and with the first one we wanted to showcase where he was at, so you had cameras on him and stuff like that, which actually Sly did in Rocky 2 or 3. He had the cameras on. I think it was 2 actually. The cameras were on while he was training and all that jazz. And so
when he was just training in real life.
Yeah, when he was just training in the film. Film, just because that's what boxers do. I think we took some stuff from Mayweather during his training process. You see tons of just press around him, and it helps sell the fight. And so being in a different part of his career, it wasn't like in Rocky or Creed I where he was just by himself and it was him and Rocky. And so we took that. He was working on speed because he thought that's what he thinks is going to help him beat Drago. And then later on in the training montage, we just go to bare bones. And that's where Sly was like, hey, I did the snow, and so let's do the desert. It's like total opposite. Let's bring him to hell. So going to the desert was Sly's idea, which I thought really helped tell the story. And, this sort of this guy coming out of the ashes in this dark place. And so the montages dealt with his mentality, his psyche, as well as his body. So it's nice to kind of tell that story with the montage.
I know a lot of training would have been involved for you, Florian, but what about for you, Dolph, to keep up with Florian? Did you have to do your own fair share of training?
Yes, I did. I did do a lot of weights for this film. Try to put on some weight, some size, to look like one of those, old guys who's always in shape, that he never, Drago is always strong. Even if he's been drinking vodka for 30 years, he's still strong. And I had to throw him around, which is exhausting in a couple of scenes, especially one scene that was cut out when we have a physical kind of altercation. And in a club, and that was just, I was exhausted. So I'm glad I did the training.
But we did a lot of training together.
Yeah, we did.
It took me
to get to know each other.
A lot of times into the gym, and I can tell you, this guy's real. This guy hits the weights. He's eating the weights inside the gym, and a couple of exercises he was doing even more weights, than me. So he's still fit. He's still strong.
Well,
he could fight
about
himself.
The same. Yeah, I could rescue you if you needed.
It's a good number to have on speed dial on your
absolutely,
phone.
Absolutely.
ID, Ivan Drago.
And when I see your name attached to a project, you're on my sort of short list of people like, well, if she's in it, I want to watch it. I know it's going to be good.
Oh,
It's going to be something of
thanks.
quality.
Thank you.
How do you go about selecting what to sort of devote your time and energy to?
Something that I just like care about, and I really like to do things that scare me. I love to get a job and wonder if I can do it, so I'm typically looking for something inside of it that's challenging, and just working with collaborators that I really believe in. Particularly when you talk about making these big movies, I feel like I like to see films like this when they have heart and they have something to say. So that tends to be something that I look for. And then I just like cross my fingers and hope for the best. You know, I think like making movies feels like, just because of the amount of time that it takes and how close you get to people, it really does kind of feel like making babies in a way. And you send them off into the world and you hope they don't, you know, they're not misunderstood. Thanks for saying that. That's so sweet.
It's true. It is quite a short list, I have to say. So I
Who
don't
else
say
is
that
on
very
the list?
often.
I'm curious.
I'm not sure if I'm revealing that information.
Oh, wow.
And we're here in Philadelphia, where a lot of the movie is set and shot. What's it like shooting in the city, and especially when people hear what it is that you are shooting? What the reaction to that?
No, people get really excited, man. Like it's definitely a Rocky-driven city. They love it. The energy is at an all-time high. People open their doors for us. It's very welcoming. It feels good, you know, when they find out you're doing something for the city and having people involved, working on set, being actors. I don't know, I know it feels good. I feel the same thing when I go back home to my hometown. If I shoot something there, I shot my first feature there. You get that kind of love and respect, you know, and I think there's similarities between the cities. And I don't know, Philly's just a great place, man. It's truly the brotherly love, city of brotherly love.
And I know on Rocky IV, Sylvester Stallone spent several days in hospital after one of the scenes, because it's dangerous even recreating boxing on screen, isn't it? Is that something that he's sort of reminded you of over the years?
Well, not him, but all the journalists, because he tells everybody else, "Hey, don't put me in the hospital. I almost died." Yeah, I mean, I think it was true. You know, he got hurt for some reason. I don't think. I didn't intend it, but you know, he did get hurt quite badly, and he was in the hospital 2 weeks. I didn't know it at the time. I was a kid and I had 2 weeks off. It was like, yes. But then somebody told me Sly's in the hospital, and it was like, what happened? Oh, you punched him to hit him in the heart or something. It's like, but I mean, if anybody's had more injuries in movies than me, it's him, Stallone. I mean, he's everything is broken on him. I don't know how he keeps it up, and he still looks good. Yeah, every vertebrae has been like either replaced or like dislodged or screwed back in there or something.
And we're here in Philadelphia, where a lot of the movie is kind of set and shot. What's it like shooting a kind of it's a Creed movie now, but part of the Rocky series? What's it like shooting that here, and what's people's sort of reaction when they know that is what you're shooting?
No, it's amazing. Philadelphia is a beautiful city. You know, obviously it's a character in the Rocky franchise and the Creed franchise as well. So, I mean, the city gives nothing but love. They go crazy whenever they see Sly on the street or for shooting on location. And they're giving me a lot of love too. So I've been feeling it from the city. I feel very welcome, and we love shooting movies here.
And if you're ever near those art museum stairs, do you have to sort of take a run up and down yourself?
Yeah, you just kind of have to. It's like one of those things. It's like, I got to do it, and then you just kind of have your moment, or you take a photo by the statue. So those are like cool, iconic places in Philly that everybody knows. So it's just pretty cool to be a part of that.
And I believe you took a few essentially real punches from Florian yourself and had to give a few, obviously, to make the shots work. What's the challenge of sort of doing that, obviously, without kind of hopefully injuring each other?
No real challenges. I think you just got to do it. Try not to kill the guy, and then really take his head off. But but give enough where he can react to it, and it looks good. And you know what you're getting yourself into. At this point, we're looking forward to him. Those are the, we have to beg the director and producers to be like, let us take a real shot, because they're always trying to protect us. So we actually look forward to being able to take those punches.
Michael B. Jordan, thanks very much.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey!